Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being your show, we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of 4400. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. A big part of this episode, at the core of it, is Hayden, obviously dealing with his separation from Mildred and wanting to rescue her. He made it pretty clear last episode he's going to save her from Yipsy Med, but also putting that plan into action, kind of putting everything aside. And at first you can kind of like, at first you're like, wow, he's kind of going so far above and beyond. But now when you look at his past, you kind of understand. His mom was the only person that really understood him. Like, I guess he seemed a little different, especially from his time, especially like he had his uncle, like thinking like, oh, like, you know, his aunt, his uncle and his aunt, you know, his uncle's wife saying like, oh, what an odd duck he is. And he was very like, oh, like you look at someone when you look at an adult when you're talking to or something, because Hayden's very like, I guess like maybe like awkward or anxiety driven. And it's like, it seems like he needs, like his mom is the only thing that could ease whatever issues like he has. So it's like, you know, but his mom like prepared him and told him, kind of tried to tell him like, right, like whatever problem there is, there's a solution for it. All you have to do is find a way around it. So like him and his mom had a very special connection, and he's only had that same like special connection with someone like Mildred. So I think that's why Mildred's so important to him, because it's like we find out about the circumstances of him getting locked up in a sanatorium after his mom died, because his family members decided to do that just because I guess it's like just to either get rid of him, or they thought like, oh, he's messed up and this is the only way to fix him. And he's like, the only reason why he got out of that sanatorium is because of the green light. And that also explains, because he made it clear from the beginning he didn't trust doctors and stuff like that. And that's why it was a byproduct of him being locked up somewhere he didn't deserve to be locked up, because his mom was only supposed to be going a week, but she ended up dying and he got put into custody of other family, and they did that to him. Because, you know, as his uncle said, I'm sure it's like oh, I'm going to show you discipline of like, you're going to go in there like quote unquote weirdo, and you're going to come out like the disciplined young man you should be or something, you know? So that's why finding Mildred's so important, because the last important person to him like that died. Like he needs someone in his life to kind of balance him out. It was his mom, and now she's gone, and he found that with Mildred. And he even says that later on, she made him feel safe, you know? So all the while that's happening, you have Keisha and Jarrell trying to close the gap between them and the 4400, because it's like, right, we're aware of the superpowers. Claudette made it seem like she's the only one, but they're pretty sure with everything that's going on recently that there's definitely has to be more at play here, that other people have to have powers, and they're trying to get the 4400 to open up. Obviously Keisha tried to reach out to Shanice, but it's of course like Shanice is going to be like the biggest resistor of that, because she's been the biggest advocate for the 4400. So it's like the less people who know about their powers, the less, because she doesn't quite trust anyone else with this knowledge, so she's keeping it to her. You know, it's just like, right, I don't want anyone else to know about my circumstances, you know, because I think it's interesting when you actually break it down, especially the Rev's conversation with Shanice, I think kind of changed things, at least in some perspective of her mind, because it's like, right, she figured she was coming from the perspective of my circumstance, my like what's good for my situation is kind of good for everyone's situation, which isn't necessarily the truth, but we'll get to the Rev situation because he's got his own, you know, machinations at play here. But it's just the interesting thing of like, Shanice is trying to look out for everyone, but truth be told, it's like there's also self-interest involved in her part of like, right, I'm not going to open up about powers and stuff like that so that you could, because I don't know that you're an ally on my side, even though you and Jarrell have tried to do your best. It's just, you know, Shanice is kind of a little resistant to that, and it's like, right, last thing I want is to be screwed over. I think, and you kind of tie that in with her belief that, like, I don't want my situation jeopardized, you know, despite me not living like I and everyone else are getting free. So, but she internalizes it as like, no, me being free, like it's the same, it's applicable to everyone's circumstances, even though like she hasn't really gotten to know what everyone else's circumstances are, you know? So it kind of creates that complicated thing of like, you are trying to do the right thing, but it's like what's right by you isn't 100% right by everyone else type of thing. But like I said, the Rev has his own thing, but like I said, we'll get to that a little later. So aside from all of that, circling back to the main crux of it, Hayden gets not only Mariah to help, but even LaDonna and Andre. Because, like, yeah, they haven't gotten any updates about Mildred or Noah, so they are both concerned, but it's also like, right, like, you know, Andre's part to play in it. It's like, right, you know, well-intentioned as he was, like, if it wasn't for him, there'd be no Noah and Mildred situation. But also for LaDonna, if she hadn't leaked that video, like, things probably wouldn't have turned out the way they did either, too. So, you know, it's like they both feel like they have parts to play in this. So Hayden, and I think this is interesting because this is the first episode where they actually show us Hayden's visions. Because it would always be kind of like he sees it but we don't. But now, like, we actually get to see what it looks like for him, how it can manifest itself like that. But Hayden's actually the one who kind of planned everything out on trying to get in, and Mariah supplied, like, the uniforms that they were going to need, like Andre playing the role of a doctor, Hayden playing the role of a patient and stuff like that. Because Andre did do some reconnaissance, as Hayden suggested. He went with Jarrell, who found out that the 4400 are being put in a special wing, a newly made wing, and that wing has no visitors. And even Jarrell talks to Keisha about that later on. Like, that's weird. Why would that be a thing? Like, why we as case workers aren't even allowed to go there either? So, like, what's up with that? We know what that's up with, because it's like we don't want anyone outside of being a part of that knowing about what's happening in that facility. But we'll get to that soon enough. But poor Andre, like, I wonder, did he actually take pictures of anything, or was it all pictures of himself? Because he didn't know cameras had, like, either he had the phone the wrong way when he was taking the pictures, or it accidentally got set to the front facing camera. And so maybe that's because, like, we saw him taking the video. I was like, oh, and I love LaDonna being like, I taught you better than that. She was, like, so disappointed in him. But he had to go to Shanice for help, which he was reluctant to. But Hayden's like, right, this is about saving Mildred and Noah. Like, shouldn't that come first before your whatever uncomfortableness you have with Shanice? And so he, like, tells her what's what. But it's like, right, we need to get them out of there. It's like, we haven't heard anything from them, so this is kind of the best option. And so she does, dive into his memories and sees, like, Miguel, because they brought him in to be the doctor for a very specific reason, because I guess he's, like, their main person, because they needed someone that could check on the 4400, publicly, and kind of let their guard down, and also act as kind of like the doctor behind the scenes to, I guess, orchestrate everything in that special wing of the hospital. But aside from that, Shanice was able to get the code, but that's not the only memory she saw. The last memory she sees is of what Andre experienced when he was covering her up, and it's like, oh, thank you, Logan, I love you. And it's just like, now she's like, oh, because she's like, it feels like you've been avoiding me. He's like, no, I haven't been avoiding you, I've been busy. But in that moment, and she's like, oh, I didn't. And he's like, no, like, thank you, Miss Murray, not calling her Shanice or anything, just, and walking away. And it's like, now she's in this complicated position, because now she sees, like, why he's been avoiding her. It's like, yeah, there was something there, but it's like, right, I'm still holding on to my husband because he was my husband a couple weeks ago to me. It's like, it hasn't been the 16 years it has been for him. So that's the complicated thing. So they were able to get in with LaDonna, because it's also neat to know, like, her illusions don't just apply to her, like, creating objects. She can even create stuff on herself to make herself look like anyone else. So she made herself look like Miguel. Granted, she can't change her voice. Now, I'm curious, is that going to be something we'll see later on where she can modify that? Like, once she gets better control of her powers, she'll be able to create the illusions of being these other people like Miguel, and even later on Jessica. It speaks volumes, but I think it's fascinating that it's gotten to even that point. But I'm curious, is it going to get to the point she could even mimic their voices too, or is that something that the illusion can't 100%? Because for early days, they probably just want to make it clear it's LaDonna, especially because, just to also make it seem awkward when she has to, like, pretend to, like, do Miguel's voice, or just be like, yeah, But luckily, they were able to get inside the facility. But luckily, like I said, Hayden like being in that place that reminded him of the sanatorium, it was too much. But Andre was able to help kind of pull him back of like, right, Mildred and Noah, like you're the leader in this, like we have to go save them. That's top priority. But as they're going through the facility, they find out it's not just 4,400 from their like hotel. It's the other 4,400s that are scattered all around. That we see one person with wings. We see someone else who's on fire, and their rooms are very specifically designed to cater to counter their powers. So it's like the government already knows about their superpowers. Luckily, they are able to find Mildred, and when they do find Mildred, though, like LaDonna shows up as Jessica and just tells them to go somewhere else. And one guard catches them, and Mildred snaps and starts breaking his... Like, she basically quaked him the way, like, Andre was like, his bones are shattered. I was like, yo, that's... She basically quaked him. Like, her telekinesis, like, she, like, broke, like, the bones in his arm and stuff like that. And you're like, Jesus. And it's like, yeah, the same Mildred that went in isn't the same Mildred. Because Mildred was very, like... I chalked it up to like, and I could be wrong, I chalked it up like that Mildred's like from the 60s or 70s. Like she's kind of like because she was always kind of like, almost like she had that very like peace and love type of like quote unquote hippie vibe to her. So like that's what and I think that's supposed to show like how much this facility changed her, turned her into the sweet person she was before, until like, but obviously for her she was pissed because it's like, oh, like we don't know the full extent of what they did, because she doesn't want to talk about it. She may never want to talk about it, but it's like, oh, like, right, he can take more. The more you can take more if you just push yourself. So it's like, I guess like that was the justification they kept telling her of like, oh, you can take more punishment than this, like just push yourself. And she slammed him against the wall and broke his arms. And now we get the fulfillment of Hayden's vision, where Jessica's like injecting her, and it turns out it was LaDonna disguised as her injecting her, because it's like, right, that's the only way I can stop her before she killed him. And Andre examines him, and it's like, yeah, his bones, like his arms are broken, and the bones are inside are shattered. And in that moment, we see his arm fix it. So I guess that's Andre's ability as a whole. Like I said, their powers are reflected, because I guess you can make the argument like Hayden wants to be able to see everything that's coming so that he can always protect himself and be on guard and be ready, because life can be so unpredictable. You never know what's around the corner. So having the ability to know what's around the corner. Andre's a doctor. He wants to fix people. So it seems like his power is the opposite of Claudette's, where Claudette can heal herself. Once again, we don't know if there's going to be advancement to these abilities, whether there's like a second stage or a second level to them, or whether they are just at their base level what they are. Like, we don't know if there will be anything more. But Andre was able to fix the guy's arm, because, like I said, he's a doctor and wants to help people. So I think that's his latent ability finally surfacing. And so they were able to get out. But things with Mariah didn't go well, because the cop popped up and he's like, oh, your tags are... I guess it's like, right, she didn't have all the proper paperwork on her. She's like, oh, let me make a call. I thought she was going to call Shanice. Instead, she called her dad. So it's kind of like, right, just as Keisha shows up because she wants to ask Jessica about things, it's like, Jessica, like, wait, Andre, what's going on here? And then LaDonna speaks, and she's like, LaDonna? And it's just like, guys, go ahead and like Logan help. So Logan's in the know about some of this, because it's like, right, when she went into the car, LaDonna looked like Jessica. When she left the car, she looked like LaDonna, not unless the illusion broke it. Especially later on when Shanice is like, oh, he's from the 1930s. So it's like, yeah. So it's like Logan knows some extent, because obviously Mariah doesn't know the full extent of anything, because Hayden was mainly talking about his perception, his abilities, where he was like, oh, I have visions. And she's like, oh yeah, there's just some people who are more in tune with the world and just have that third eye. She even gave him a pendant that basically she's like, right, like this will allow you to kind of tap into your powers even more, and I think it might be like a placebo effect of like, it doesn't actually work, like in a sense of it actually works, but more so like it gives him the confidence, like if I grab onto it, if I have it, it does feel like my powers get expanded. So it might be more so that than anything else. Like it might have a placebo effect of that. But obviously Shanice was not too happy about the circumstances about this. It's like, right, Andre knew that Mariah was involved and didn't, because I think what I think what Keisha said to her early in the episode got to her because she's like, I'm used to dealing with the government. And it's like, you're used to dealing with the government from 2005. It's been 16 years. A lot can change. This government's a whole other beast, you know, in the grand scheme of everything. So it's like, you know, I mean, you could make, but it's like, it's a whole other beast. It's not the same beast you're used to dealing with, essentially. So I think that conversation with Keisha is what sparked her kind of snapping like that, because it's like something could have happened to Mariah, and it's like, yes, but, you know, and I'll have a stern talking to her and ground her, and it's like, oh, really? And, you know, Logan's like, Shanice, you don't get to judge how I deal with how I raise and discipline our daughter. You know, and it's like, at the end of the day, you might be pissed at Hayden and Mariah, but like, Mariah, I'm glad that when she was in trouble, she did what I raised her to. Call me to help. And despite, yes, he will be grounded, but Hayden, being the kind, sincere, and caring person that he is, willing to go above and beyond for the person he cares about, that in itself should speak volumes. And it's like, I'm proud of him for doing that. And I think that kind of puts things in perspective for Shanice, because it's like, right, like, I get you're scared because of what Keisha said, but also you're someone that always stood up for what you believed in, and I think maybe that shifted things of like, right, I've been on the offense a little bit, but lately I have been on the defense, because, you know, she's been, you know, you should never make moves out of fear. It's kind of like, always kind of like the saying, right? And I think Shanice has been making moves out of fear. It's just like, you know, fear for screwing things up with her circumstances with Mariah. Not sure where things between her and Logan stand. I mean, he's already remarried and everything. So, you know, that bridge is there, but it's like having some relationship with your daughter. You don't want to jeopardize that. You want to just slowly pace things out, and so that you can, I don't know, like, because at the end of the day, Shanice has to figure out, like, what she wants. It's like, what does she want for her life? Like, readjusting back into society. Like, what does that necessarily look like for her? She's moving in with Miss Grover, but, like, other than that, then, like, you know, what do you want with your life? Like, what are you going to do? Like, are you going to go back to being a lawyer or what, you know? So, but I think that just like, right, going above and beyond for someone you love, like, Shanice would do that. I just think in this moment, it's just like the tables are a little turned, because she's scared, because in her mind, she still sees Mariah as, it's like, yeah, you're my little girl, but you're not that little girl anymore, that little baby I held in my arms, you know? So I think that's interesting. I did like I said, it all coming full circle. The last thing Hayden's mom said to him, but also something that Mildred's kept saying to Hayden, that he can stand on his own 2 feet. Like, you have all the tools you need necessary. Because it's like, right, you came up with the problem solving for this situation. You pretty much came up with the entire plan. You knew exactly who you needed help from to make it happen, you know? So that's proof of that. And so Mildred is leaving, and it's like, I've got to go save her. And I'm like, I'm curious who Mildred's referencing. So I think that's fascinating. I guess like she's running away, because it's like, right, she can't stay there, because we'll get to the church's situation. It's a sanctuary, sure, but still, like, they'd come looking for her, having broken out a facility, so she has to go underground. And Hayden kind of wants to send her off. You know, and it's like, right, me asking you to stay it's what's best for me. It's not what's best for you. I know you need to go out and do this. And, you know, she's like, right, just tell me I do save her. And Hayden has a vision, and it seems like Mildred is leading kind of a squadron, like kind of like a little rogue operation. And so I don't think Mildred's the sweet person that she is anymore. Like, once again, being at that facility changed her, especially, you know, once again, we didn't get into like her experience, you know, what exactly they did, but probably like Hayden's like situation, like, you know, like I think Hayden can probably surmise, because probably what happened to him, poked and prodded, even him talking about the screams of all the other people around him. So he tried not to scream. So burying all of that too, and the pain and the sadness, like, I'm sure, because Mildred didn't know if anyone was going to come save her, didn't know if anyone could. So it is the situation now that it's interesting to know that that's what her future holds. And Hayden was like, oh, I don't know. Like, obviously for him, it's like, he hopes that that doesn't turn out the way he think it does, but his visions, yes, he doesn't always know the full context of them, but his visions always are 100% accurate. He just doesn't know about the circumstances surrounding them. And so the thing is, I believe Mildred will become like almost like a revolutionary, but she might be on the most extremist route that like, I will hurt people if I need to, just for whoever she's trying to save at the end there. I'm not really sure who she was referencing, not unless it was someone else that she got close to. But Hayden, LaDonna, and Andre all talked to Keisha and Jarrell about what's going on. And it's like, right, the government already knows about our superpowers and tells them about the other rooms that had people's power. So it's like they know about Noah's in there, but there's people from other facilities being taken as well. So they've known for a while. So now that Jarrell and Keisha being on the inside could be their means of getting insider information about this. Like, this is Mr. Green's whole operation, because I don't think Jessica was kind of pulled back from all of this because they've taken over. Like, once again, what the green haze is, how much the government knows about this. Like, did they find out about people's abilities because of other facilities? Like, in the hotel, they were able to keep it all, like, on the down low, but maybe other people's abilities manifested in a way they couldn't keep it hidden. So they've known because of that, or is there some other reason why the government knows? And what are they planning? I mean, the typical thing under these circumstances is, well, these are dangerous weapons, rather than people, weapons out and about. So we need to keep them contained. But also it's probably like a national security thing of like, right, if we could replicate these abilities, find out how they got these abilities, why them specifically, we could utilize this for, national security and warfare and stuff like that. That's typically the go-to for like why the government would want to like have these powers for themselves type of thing. So that's currently where my mindset is, but maybe it'll prove to be something else. We'll have to wait and see. But I brought it up earlier, finally circling back to the Rev situation. He talked to Shanice about making the hotel a church because the church will serve as a place for people to stay, because a lot of those people don't have places to go. Like, there are just some people who don't want to don't have any friends or family that they can turn to. Once again, like, Shanice is coming from the position of, you and some of the others are lucky to have places you can go and belong. Not everyone is in that circumstance. So, this place has become a home. They've found family and friends amongst each other. There's brothers and sisters here with them that they don't have to feel alone. So this being a church is a really good thing, So Shanice was able to help him by like making this a church. They can stay here because the government will have no say in like taking that away from them. But the moment Andre does, because Shanice live streams it for him, and the moment she does that, he goes off. He starts showing like that side of himself that you thought like we figured we would be seeing from the beginning, of him being like, right, this is my brothers and sisters, like we are united here. We were chosen by God, and anyone that gets in our way will be struck down by the Almighty God. Type of thing, because he has one of the 4400. Her power is, I guess, just light in general. Maybe she's light based, and she was able to create manifest the light in the form of the green light that brought them there, being super symbolic of like, yes, we've been bathed in the green light, and that brought us here. So I was like, that's interesting. Even because even Jarrell was there being like, oh, this is not a little ominous. It's like, yeah, like Andre's kind of starting his own cult, Once again, Claudette had her reservations about him because it's like, right, like, are you doing this for other people's sake, or are you doing this for the sake of having power and position? I mean, you have places you can go. You have a child you can track down, but you choose not to. And I think that is going to come back up later on, like his kid. I think that situation is going to come back up because it's like you live streaming that, and that becoming like a very public thing, and the hotel becoming this sanctuary / church. And it's going to come back in a big way of like your child's probably going to come find you after all of this. You've been avoiding We'll see. It's definitely going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But it definitely it's starting to look like, and there we go. Like, I knew from the very beginning, the moment we got introduced to you, it's like, you're going to be that character. Because typically, like, you have the Reverends tend to lean that way. Because I think of the show Haven. We saw what the Reverend in that kind of started. Like, you can definitely see other avenues being like applied in this particular case as well. Like, right, I've got God on my side, and he being the sweet talker that he is, he's, very good at swaying people. Once again, he wants to pretend he's nothing like his father, but the thing is, he's exactly like his dad. So coming through that green light did best for other people, probably did worse for some others in his particular case, I think. But we'll see how ultimately that all plays out. But I'm curious to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. Because I'm also curious too, like, he's talking to Mr. Green, and even Shanice's like, that's weird. Like, what's that about? Like, why would you be not getting all schmoozy and close to the guy that's kind of the opposition that you're talking about, fighting up against the government, which I'm like, not unless he's selling his people out. I wouldn't think he is, but I guess he's trying to leverage better situations for the people, but not less, I don't know. Not less he is, because I was like, well, because how would they got Mildred and Noah, but it's like, I'm wondering, like, he is one of the few that did know about Mildred and Noah's ability, so that's why I'm also like, could he have actually been the one that sold them out? Because I'm like, who else would, I mean, because there was nothing on the cameras to necessarily confirm, like, but they just happen to get two of the people that their abilities are known. I mean, granted, Claudette's are known, and he hasn't sold her out. Yeah, so that's why I'm like, maybe it's not him. But it's just really weird that you're just getting on schmoozy and close. But it could just be like I said, he's leveraging that, like, his newfound power, and it's just like, oh, I'm gonna be the opposing force to the government, which it seems like I said, Mildred's kind of doing her own, like, little squad that she's gonna make. That's kind of an opposition of sorts. So it's definitely going to be interesting to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.